Good afternoon and welcome to Harrington Family Health Center's continuing series of education programs for our community and our patients. I'd like to let you know that Harrington Family Health Center is a federally qualified healthcare clinic where we focus on integrative healthcare, and we have a variety of departments including dental, primary care, and behavioral health. We service our local community, and we are here to really build partnerships with our patients, and it's very important that we have our doors open to the community for events like this so that we can interact both in consultation rooms and here in the boardroom and in the community. So welcome. This talk is one of a series, and it's mindful self-care. So, ready for my slide. So here's our website, and this is where you can access information about the health center, how to contact us, who works here, and what we're all about. There's also some interesting links to information about healthcare in rural America and other things related to the federally qualified healthcare center and what a unique and important part that is of our healthcare. So since we're talking about mindful self-care today, the first thing that I would invite each of you to do is to go ahead and take a minute and really get comfortable in the space that you're in. So if you're in a chair, or if you're resting your elbow on the table, or however it is that you find your body right now, just go ahead and take a minute and feel the weight of your body in the seat. It's okay to take a nice deep breath and that ever so helpful exhale. And then we'll repeat it. And the invitation is to go ahead and open your listening, right? The practice of listening is a very mindful thing, and it connects us to the present moment. And as we're here together today, I would invite you to go ahead and get comfortable. I'm going to close my eyes for a moment because it helps me to get centered inside. Take another breath, and I'm going to open my listening. I'm going to recognize that right now I can hear the sound of my own voice. I can hear the sounds in the room and those sounds that are occurring outside of this room, in the building. And it's so reassuring to know that I don't have to do anything to make these sounds happen, and I don't have to do anything to listen. It's automatically happening. It's also a good time to recognize that there are so many things that are happening for our bodies, for ourselves, for our community, that we really don't have to do anything to make happen. Like being nourished and supported by our breath, like recognizing that, hundreds or thousands of biochemical processes that are happening right now to support our health and our well-being. And a little trick of the mind is to invite the mind to recognize the one or the very many things that are actually going right in this moment right now. Like for me, one example is I'm standing and I'm being supported by this floor, right? I don't have to do anything to make that happen. What a relief. Next slide, please. So the invitation today is to think about healthcare. And the question is, what is healthcare? A lot of times people think about healthcare as something that's actually happening to them or happening outside of them, and they recognize that there are a lot of players involved, typically doctors, nurses, specialists. Does anything else come to mind for folks of people who provide healthcare to us? How that happened, who's involved? dentists, phlebotomists. And where is it happening? It's happening in clinics, it's happening in hospitals. But I would suggest to you that actually the biggest part of our own healthcare is our self-care. And that self-care and really getting a handle on attending to self-care day to day is the most powerful tool, or one of the most powerful tools that we have to make a difference in our own lives. Self-care is not about self-indulgence, it's about self-preservation. And I think that's so important because a lot of times we have the concept that it's so selfish to take care of myself. And I would say, no, it's really essential to take care of ourselves. If we look at this diagram, which shows self-care as the foundation of healthcare, we can see if it's a pyramid, it's actually the biggest part that's supporting our health. Next, we have our primary care, which is an interface with our primary care provider. Then secondary care is usually a specialist. And the tertiary care is some very specialized care like inpatient hospitalization or a referral from another referral. But you can see that's the absolute smallest and maybe even rarest, although it's happening every day in our community. We hear about it. We know family members and friends who are receiving this specialized care, but it's really very small measure if we count of all the things that involve our own care. And again, getting the idea away from it being selfish, we have a both and situation here, not an either or. When we care for ourselves, we can better care for others. There's that old adage, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? So if there's nothing inside of you, nothing is going to come out when you go to give it to somebody. And when I think of self-care for myself, I think of care that includes me. It doesn't exclude me. It doesn't put me necessarily above other people, but it includes myself and others. And a good example of this, it's both and, even when there's seeming conflicts, like we have a cultural idea as Americans that we're so individual, right? We're rugged individuals, but yet we're kind of expected to be also a little bit self-sacrificing. Yet we all get through the day with those ideas operating on us, right? And so the idea that it includes us is so important. And self-care is actually the biggest part of healthcare. If we each take a minute to think about how many times we were in the doctor's office last year or in front of somebody who was actually having an encounter to provide us specialized care, we might come up with a really big number if we were struggling with a health challenge or we have some chronic things. But for most of our population, it's probably going to be somewhere between 2 and 10 visits. Those visits are typically 5 to 40 minutes. So we're talking about a matter of hours in a year, where 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365, we've got ourselves. The World Health Organization estimates that 60 to 85% of all healthcare is delivered at home by a layperson, and that's actual, like you've got a cold and you're treating it, or you've got the flu or a cut or a scrape, not the practice of daily self-care. And usually it's a woman who's providing this care. So that's a lot, 60 to 85%. And I just want to let you know that self-care is a real thing. I'm not making any of this up. It's actually been documented and studied as people. We care about each other, and there are actually people who spend their time researching self-care and how to get people more on board with what it means and how to get a good handle on it so they can do their best. So if we look at the actual definition from the World Health Organization, Self-care and health refers to activities, which is key, activities, individuals, families, and communities undertake with the intention, that's also key, intention of enhancing health, preventing disease, limiting illness, and restoring health. These activities are derived from knowledge and skills from the pool of both professional and lay experience. They are undertaken by lay people on their own behalf, either separately or in participation with, in participative collaboration with professionals. Whew, what does that mean? So it means, oh, I'm sorry, we reverse back to that? So it means that it's an active, purposeful, both and situation where people are using what they know from their doctor, what they know from their grandma, what they know from their own experience, and they do it with their doctors on their own, both. And so these folks who are busy studying self-care, the real thing, have broken it down into 7 different sections or pillars. So there's health and information and knowledge, which speaks to, I know generally about health. I know how to recognize symptoms. I know my own personal health history. I kind of have some idea of what best practices might be, whether that's best practices in my family when somebody's got a cold, or best practices if there's an emergency situation, who do I call for help? Or I'm learning best practices from my healthcare provider because she's educating me on what I should do to take care of myself. So the next part, and that's the focus of today's talk really, is about mental well-being, self-awareness, and agency. So that's one pillar. Physical movement is a pillar. Eating healthy is a pillar. Risk management, hygiene, and responsible use of self-care products and services. So this is the great news. You're already doing this. Every day, we're engaged in taking care of ourselves. In fact, I would say to you that I would think 100% of what we do is based on trying to make us feel better or well. I mean, most of us aren't on purpose trying to hurt ourselves or hurt the people we care about. I think what comes into play is our self-awareness and our skill level, and that speaks to number 2, the second pillar, right? How good are we at recognizing what helps us and what we need? Another thing to look at is the should-shame dilemma. Sometimes when we start to think about self-care, people just put their head down. They say, oh, I should be not eating that chocolate. I should be not drinking, I should be not doing that. I should be doing this. I should be doing this. And should is good because it's like giving you a zug. Like, see, you get a zug. But should maybe isn't quite the place we want to stop. There's more depth that we can find, and we'll talk about that as we move through here. And the same thing with worry. It just drains our energy. It doesn't help us. It's a good indication that we need to pay attention, but it doesn't really help. So the questions we ask about what we're doing day to day to help is it purposeful? Are we purposely engaged with the intent of caring for ourselves? Is it compassionate? Is it systematic? Meaning, do we apply the same thing that works each day? Or how close do we get to that goal? And is it effective? Like, I don't want to do something that doesn't work, right? So self-care is already happening. You already know a lot about your health. Your attitude and ability are key here. I bet today each one of you moved. You probably ate. You may or may not have worn a seatbelt here, but that speaks to risk management. If I was riding a bike, I may or may not ride a helmet. The best practice is that I should. Should. Wait, did I just say that word? Interesting. Especially this time of year, I'm washing my hands a lot. I consider rest a part of hygiene. I wondered where to put that. I was like, rest, where is that? Is it missing from our culture? No, I think it goes in the hygiene category. And another example here, this one on the last pillar is the one about prudent and responsible use of self-care products. I'm really glad they make over-the-counter migraine medicine. That can be a lifesaver, and that is clearly self-care, right? If I don't feel well and I take that medicine, it really helps me to get through the day. Again, just to take another brief look through, there are a lot of pieces. The good news about that is that at any point we can enter this cycle and take care of ourselves. Oh, there's some bubbles. Okay, so what are those bubbles doing on there? That seems kind of maybe unusual. Well, I want to say the good word about breathing. There it is, proof of life. I have breath. In case you didn't know, there it goes. Breathing. There are very few guarantees in life, but I guarantee that you were born breathing, and breathing will be till the end of your life. Wow, what a power. Just take a minute and think about how often am I aware of my breathing? For most people, most of the time, unless they're practicing a practice or they have an active mindful engagement on self-care, they're missing the opportunity. I think respirations for an adult human is like about 18 an hour, and I'm not real quick with math, but that would be a lot of opportunities in a day to pay attention to what it feels like to inhale and exhale. And what's the big deal about that? Well, we'll get into it. But before we do, I want to talk about a simple exercise that's called 4 breathing. Anybody can do it, even if you're 4 years old. You only need to know the number 4 and to be able to breathe. Again, since you have an awareness of your body, because we listened for a moment at the beginning, if you could kindly just invite yourself to be in your body now and to kind of become aware of, where is that breath starting? And go ahead and take one. And then let it out. Well, for me, that started in my belly. Well, that's good news, because a lot of times it's starting in my chest. I really heard that. I heard my own breathing. So back to the practice of 4 breathing. So 4 breathing is as simple as counting to 4 as you inhale, counting to 4 as you exhale, and then pausing for 4 seconds, right? So it looks something like this. And then though I just repeated it twice, the invitation is to repeat it 4 times. Well, what does that do? Does that do anything? Well, let's look at the next slide. Mindful self-care. Well, you saw how I had a lot of opportunity to attend to my body and how I was feeling, and you might even notice a change in the tone of my voice or the rate at which I'm speaking if you're listening. And now here's where we talk about mindful self-care, which is really inviting calm. And our breath can actually be a wave of calm throughout our day if we notice it. And when we're calm, we have a better chance to experience resilient health. What does it mean to be mindful? Well, it probably means a lot of different things, because there's tons of information on the internet about it. One thing I like to start with is that the idea of mindful in some ways comes into our popular culture through some Eastern ideas, but really even Western cultures have had mindfulness as a practice for a long time. It's just that in the vernacular, we see mindful as maybe yoga or meditation, but it actually means to be heartful. And it's kind of a mistranslation, because in the West we don't have the same word, so we lose a whole piece of it. And people can think, oh, it's just about thinking. No, it's really about being centered, being in the center of your life, of your being, of your day, of your moment, being mindful. So being conscious or aware of something, and the synonyms are aware, conscious, sensible, alive, alert, acquainted, heedful, wary, chary, wise, hip, cognizant, regardful. So awake and aware. When I look at those words and I think about our life, like it's an opportunity to really have an intimate knowledge of our thoughts, feelings, our body sensations. John Kabat-Zinn, who is an important person in the mindfulness community, because he was the person who coined this next definition of mindfulness practice from mindfulness-based stress reduction program, is paying attention in the present moment, on purpose, in a particular way, non-judgmentally. Whew. Great. That's good to know that there are a lot of working parts to it. Could you show the next slide, please? So mindfulness-based stress reduction is a structured way to practice mindfulness. And primarily, it is an intervention to increase self-care by supporting a daily practice of self-care. It has several aspects to it. It was standardized in the way that it's taught, the way that it's practiced, and the purpose is to be able to teach it to many people, to be able to study it and to see what the results have. So from the work that Mr. Kabat-Zinn did, we see some information come back to say to us that practicing mindfulness-based stress reduction in that standardized way shows positive impacts on pain, depression, anxiety, quality of life, managing chronic diseases such as diabetes, heart disease, asthma, and type 2 diabetes. It's important to recognize that you don't have to do it exactly the way that he taught. One of the key things to his program is that people are actually doing it each day. And it's easy to think, oh, it's got to be a certain way. No, it doesn't. There's really a lot of room as long as we're able to engage the practice. So the research also showed that it decreases stress biomarkers, which means like our hormones are shifting to show a more relaxed state. And one of the important things about the chronic health information that comes to us from mindfulness research is that people's actual physical health may not have been changing. So like, let's say you had asthma. Your asthma might not have gone away. In fact, it probably didn't. But your relationship to your asthma and everything else that was happening day to day improved. Therefore, you report an improved quality of life and you actually feel better. And that's good. So again, it invites us to have calm and for us to have resilient health in our physical body and also mental health. So this is the point, to learn to relax on purpose. There's something called the relaxation response, and that came from a colleague of John Kabat-Zinn. His name is Dr. Herbert Benson. Benson started first, and then there was Kabat-Zinn, but now they work together. They're both, one's at UMass, one's at Harvard. I think they're both retiring at this point. But see that light switch? Wow, that's a lot of power to be able to turn on and off a light. Think about how powerful it would be if we actually had the power to turn on our feeling and sensations of relaxation and calm. That's really powerful. Some days I am so stressed out and wound up, I get in bed and I'm thinking, oh no, was that my real day? Holy crow, what's going to happen tomorrow, right? So there's a lot of power in these simple things that we're talking about. Oh boy. Okay, so let's talk about our autonomic nervous system. Okay, we're built with two parts. We have the part for beaches and the part for tigers. The part for beaches doesn't require much. We can just lay there and chill out, right? Ooh, it feels good to lay in the sand with the sun shining on us. And we don't really need a lot of blood or energy going to our legs or our behind or our shoulder muscles. We don't need those big muscles. We're just relaxing. But if we see a tiger, boy, just like that, just like the light switch, without even thinking about it, our whole nervous system shifts, which is absolutely amazing and life-saving. Think of those stories you've heard about a mama and her baby was in trouble. Maybe her baby was stuck on the car. Well, that little mama lifts the car and gets the baby out. That's tiger. That's human beings. That's amazing. But I don't know, when I look at those pictures, that tiger's beautiful, but if I had to choose, I would go ahead and show the next slide. I would choose that. I mean, that's just feeling so much better in my body, right? So let's actually talk about how that works, right? We have two sides to our nervous system. We have tigers here and beaches there, and you can see that the changes are pretty systemic. Our eyes, how much saliva we have, how fast our heart is pumping. Interesting thing about our lungs, for tigers, our breath gets really short right up here. I gotta go, I gotta run. For beaches, we get a nice big belly breath, right? And then things actually kind of turn off in our digestion system when we're stressed out, and they turn on when we're relaxed. So there are a lot of details about how this works. And it's good to know that we have the possibility to make inputs each day to move our body towards relaxation, because that really is very key to our health. It may not sound like a big deal, but I know if I had a lot of tigers in the hallways at work, or there were a lot of tigers on my telephone and I didn't get any relaxation time, I feel it in my body. You know, my shoulders start to creep up to my ears. I just don't feel right. My dinner doesn't sit well, and then maybe I can't even fall asleep. Sleep. Right, that happens at the beach, not when the tiger's around. Okay, next slide, please. Holding the good. So psychologists have actually coined a phrase, holding the good. Why would they do that? Because as human beings, it's actually kind of hard for us to do that. We're so busy solving problems throughout our day that sometimes we forget good things. So I find this picture pleasing and beautiful. It's a picture of the flume in New Hampshire, which is a great place to go if you ever get a chance to go there. And having actually been there, I have a memory that goes along with this photo of what the temperature was like on the day that I was there, and how the water falls, because it's a water course way through some mountains. It's very lovely. And you spend a good number of hours there. And I found it very relaxing and calming. So seeing that image, wow, I'm doing my body a favor, and I'm inviting myself to remember, oh yeah, I remember how cool it was that day, even though it was August, it was New Hampshire, it was cool, it was beautiful. I remember the gentle light of being in the forest. That's holding the good. May not seem like a big deal to remember something pleasant like that, but I'm actually doing my brain and my nervous system a favor. We have a negativity bias. Some researchers say that's because we had to survive in the world without society, and we needed to know where the tigers lived and where the quicksand was, and we needed to be safe in the forest or however it was that we were living. Or maybe it's just because we like a challenge and we want to solve problems. Not sure. But I don't know, maybe very savvy people have heard that relationship advice or parenting advice where if you have to say something negative, try to balance it with 5 positive things. If you've heard that, the same applies to your own brain. If something negative happens, that kind of happens every day, or something challenging or a little frightening or something that makes you feel a little bit vulnerable, please take the time to practice holding the good. Now this picture speaks to a lovely lake scene. People are fishing or camping. It is a picture of, it looks like a young family to me, and they seem kind of alone there, but I know that they're not. And in that picture, I want to draw on our ideas of summertime, being with friends, family trips, and how important it is to have supportive relationships in our life as a way of caring for ourselves. So if you're here in Down East Maine, like Harrington Family Health Center is, you might recognize these as beach roses. And I would say that these ladies are a friend to me because it's so easy for me to remember their color, to know what they smell like and how intoxicating the air gets when they're in bloom. And also to know that time of year when it's nice and warm, so my body relaxes because it's warm. And what I'm suggesting is that when we hold the good, we actually invite the engagement of each one of our senses. So sight, could you forward to the next slide? The color of the rose. Oh, the smell of the rose. where was my body standing in relationship to that? Or was I driving by in the car and that fragrance just overhit me? What was it like when I experienced that good sensory experience? That's a key point to helping us relax. Our bodies really respond well to relaxation activities that either use all of our senses, like using essential oils or lotion that smells nice, or lighting a candle, or taking a warm bath, or that we imagine. It's just as powerful if you've got a good imagination, or if you have just an average imagination but you practice regularly, to be able to conjure up enough input to get that switch to flip over to relaxation. So pillar 2, we were talking about mental well-being, right? So I think that's reflected for people in life satisfaction, optimism, self-esteem, mastery, purpose, a sense of belonging and support, and being resilient against life stressors, right? So being able to kind of surf the wave that are the challenges of our each day, because they do come for us, right? So I'm going to think about these actually as not necessarily a goal, although they are goals, but this is actually a reflection or a representation of what happens if we engage a regular mindful practice. We will be satisfied with little things in ways that we're not satisfied now, because right now we're not paying as much attention as we could to the little things. We can be optimistic because suddenly there'll be more room in our mind. Like we won't have to just stick with that one problem that's got us going. It'll be okay for that to happen in a bigger field of knowing. We feel better about ourselves. We get really good at it and gain a sense of mastery. It can help us to recall what our purpose is each day, because sometimes it's easy to get lost. I mean, if I have a to-do list, when I start on that list, by the time I get to number 4, I might have forgotten why it was important, right? So being mindful actually can result in us feeling more in touch with what we feel our purpose is, and belonging and support with ourselves, and it helps us to be better able to receive people in our environments. Well-being. What does that mean? What does it mean to have well-being? Well, I like to actually think about that as an actual feedback loop, meaning being well and feeling well-being like work together, meaning what I do to help myself actually helps me to feel better and be more able to do the next activity to care for myself. And self-awareness, again, still pillar 2, very important to recognize our own personal health information and know what helps us, what motivates us, and to recognize that we will need different things across our lifespan, and that self-care is we have opportunities at each point in our life. Next slide. Agency is very important because it's actually the ability to do these things that we're talking about today. And getting back to the idea of should, which we talked about before as perhaps being a superficial starting point, like I should do better, I should exercise or eat a certain way because it's healthy. What I would suggest if you're feeling worry or should, to really take a moment in your day, just carve out some time to sit down and think about, why do I want to have well-being? What's important to me? Maybe I want to spend time chasing my grandkids on the floor, or maybe I want to walk the Appalachian Trail, or maybe I just want to be able to take care of my garden, or maybe I want to live independently long into my senior years, right? So what motivates me? Because once I get in touch with that, and once you get in touch with that, it shifts from should to like, I really want to do that. It's important to me. And again, mindful practices are actually part of agency, even though sometimes when we're doing them, it doesn't seem like we're doing anything. What, we're just sitting there breathing? Like, that's the good news. It's not complicated. And it's actually available to everybody. Oh, okay. So, remember that fellow Dr. Herbert Benson? He borrowed the phrase progressive muscle relaxation, but he really did a lot of research on uncontrolled hypertension and what would happen if we were able to harness that relaxation response in somebody's body. And that's how we ended up with all these stress balls running around, like when you go to a trade conference or you go to a doctor's office and you end up with a stress ball. That's thanks to Dr. Benson. And what he said is just the simple, repetitive movement in a systematic way, practiced on a daily basis, is enough to gain some input into flipping that switch in your nervous system. And I know we've all seen these, right? Everybody's seen the stress ball. Next slide, please. I got this. I can do it. I know that I can squeeze this ball. If I'm not able to squeeze the ball, which some people can't, maybe one day I wouldn't be able to either, I can be aware of the sensation of where the ball is in my hand. I can breathe and feel its weight. That would be just as effective as actually squeezing the ball, right? To just become aware of that place. So just summarizing the purpose and intention as a key factor to being able to have a sustaining or sustainable practice of mindful self-care. She made a promise to herself to hold her own well-being sacred, and I would say he did too. What is this going to look like? Is tomorrow, am I going to wake up and my whole life is going to be different? No, it's really going to be the same. My time is actually mostly accounted for tomorrow. But small steps in a positive direction can lead me a long way into being well and feeling good. As part of the feedback loop, as we gain self-knowledge and we go below and beyond those shoulds, we'll find that what we're wanting and what we're seeing in our life might not they might not measure up, right? Like we might be the lion looking at the kitten, or we might be the kitten looking at the lion, but that's okay because it's a process of adjustment, right? And that's kind of what we expect. Where we are in the moment, how it feels, being here now, there's a very robust sense of health and well-being in that. And it's also okay to have a long-term goal. Like mindfulness does not prevent having long-term goals. So I would say that a key piece to practicing the mindful breathing practice, if you would like to take away that exercise as something you'd like to do, is to start with 5 minutes. If you wanted to start with 20 minutes, that would be great. But 5 minutes is really enough to make a difference. And one thing that I like to do is to pick a point. I've already taken several. Wait, I've been breathing the whole time. Right? Is to take, I wasn't aware of it the whole time that I was breathing. That's amazing. Taking a point of focus within your breath. So it could be how your breath feels in your belly. It could be how your breath feels in your chest. I like to start where my breath enters at my nostrils, just because it's easy. Because my mind is going to say, what am I supposed to be doing here being mindful? All right. Just focusing my attention right here. And an important thing to know about mindfulness or any practice of meditation, you're not going to stop your thoughts. Your mind is going to secrete thoughts just like your saliva is secreted in your mouth and hormones are getting released at your kidneys and your parathyroid. You're going to think. It's okay to think. Good thoughts could come. Frightening thoughts could come. The idea is, my attention comes right back to where that breath is entering my nostrils, because that's the work for 5 minutes, right? So no matter what comes up, I just return my attention. Okay, no problem. If it's something that needs to be addressed, it certainly will be available 10 minutes down the road, right? And I would also invite loving kindness to our discussion here. That is an actual practice, and I think it bridges the gap between thinking of self and other. And the loving kindness practice is to sit quietly in a relaxed place and to have the words, "May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be well. May I be happy," resonate in my mind. Wow, my heart too. If I was able to sit with that for half an hour, I don't know, there was a guarantee of breath. I would have to say it's very likely that I would feel a lot better at the end of that practice. I can also invite that practice to other people. So I can say, well, may my family, may my coworkers, may my community, may they all be filled with loving kindness. I can even get into a problem where I have tension in a relationship and tag that person and want them to have peace and ease. And that breaks down all the barriers between self and others, because my heart and my mind are focusing on something positive, hopeful, and compassionate for myself and for those around me. Does anybody know what that is? That is a water wagon. So we probably know the phrase falling off the wagon. For diets, for quitting bad habits, falling off the wagon. It came from folks who were trying to quit the drinking and they fell off the water wagon. Well, the reason it's in this slideshow is because we're going to fall off the wagon. What should we do when we fall off the wagon? Whether it's life or a horse that throws you, get right back on, right? We can expect that we're going to have days that are tough or busy or challenging. It's okay. There's plenty of room for us to have all of those experiences. Maybe the last slide here. So I'm just going to do a quick check-in. I'm hopeful that we thought, at least for this time together, a little bit differently about our own role in our healthy outcomes, and to recognize that self-care is happening now already. It will happen in the future. We have a chance to engage in it in a positive way, and that we have some techniques to move towards mindful agency or mindful doing. And that really the big encouragement is like, wow, hey, pat yourself on the back. You took time to learn about mindful self-care. That's really wonderful. So I'd also like to say that this information will be available at the website as well as a couple of handouts that are actually, that I won't take the time to go through right now, that are actual checklists for the different pillars of self-care, where you can actually look and see how are they measuring, when they measure self-care, how are they doing that in a healthcare office? And you can see, am I doing those things? You'll be able to check it out. We'll post a link. And then the final slide is an invitation to join us in February 15th at 4 for Women's Heart Health. And my colleague Sue Gartland is going to be teaching on that. So thank you so much for your time and attention.